Hey, hey, hey. Oh,
Hey,
There's Ron again. We were just talking about you, Ron, saying how faithful you are on these calls.
consistent
Yep, absolutely.
and Kirsten.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Glad you're enjoying it, Ron.
And it's going to get better. We get better over time here around here.
All right, there's Sean. Hi, Sean. Big
Hey, Sean.
skills.
I think you're unmuted, Sean. You can say hey.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Happy to be able to find the right alignment of time that I could join today. So I'm happy to get the little the emails, and when the timing works, I joyfully pop on. It's really great to see you
Excellent.
guys and to hear about what you're up to.
Yeah, we were trying to figure out, when to do it, what time. We had the challenge at 2:00 Eastern, which was 11 o'clock Pacific, but then our inspectors, are inspecting all day or whatever, and one of them works a full-time job, so he wouldn't be able to get on until after 5:00 Eastern. So we said, all right, let's just make it 5:00 across the board instead of having all these different times. And so everybody knows it's 5:00. We're going to do it then, and it's recorded. So if you miss something, you can jump on the recording and all of that. So yeah, it's all good stuff.
Hi, Chad.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
Oh, good. My dog.
What have I missed so far?
Not much.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't gotten started yet, Chad.
Oh, okay.
We're missing Tony, Superman. Maybe
Yeah,
I
well,
should.
Last week too, right?
This is the first week.
I mean, last week you didn't.
Oh, there's
attend
Tony.
that meeting.
Oh, here he comes.
The 5-star builder workshop was, I've lost track now, the week of the hurricane.
Yeah, that's how we do things around here, the week of the hurricane.
Right. I participated from a hotel room.
Howdy, guys.
There's Tony.
Howdy, guys.
hey,
Hey,
hey.
Tony.
You guys have a good day?
It's always a good day.
It's a good day to have a good day.
Absolutely.
Well,
Robin, did you receive the topics that
Yes,
I
I
sent
did.
to you? Okay.
Yes, I did. And I can bring them up if you need for me to, but
However is best for us to do that.
well, I think probably what we're going to do is we'll have Leanne kind of come on and introduce, what we're doing, what today is, but tell everybody about next week. And then also I might jump in with her, wanted to kind of frame a couple of the days in a little bit different framework than what we've been doing. So I could do that a little bit, Leanne, after you're done. And then after that, then Sherry, you can either come on or I can bring it up and we could start getting into the different topics at that point. So if that works for you, let's go ahead and get started, Leanne, and then we'll kind of go from there.
alrighty, you got it. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to our Tiny Talks workshop series. We're happy that you're here with us, and it's been a really good week. Hope you can join us next week. Monday, we will be having V. Tanner with Homestead Tiny Houses, who'll chat a little bit about his build practices and also take us on a tour of what builds he has in progress, which is really cool. They have a really cool facility. And Tuesday, codes and standards of, we're going to start talking about writing some laws, I believe. Robin will clarify that. And Wednesday, we'll have Scott Banta, who is knows all about developing a tiny house community because he is in the thick of things doing that in Volusia County, which is right next door to me. And then Thursday, we'll have our awesome inspector, NOAA certified inspectors again, and we'll find some more fun topics for them to talk about. So don't forget to tune in Monday, and you guys, welcome. I'm gonna turn it
Yeah,
over to
and-
Robin now. I think I'm done.
Yeah, exciting. Thank you, Leanne. Well, here's the, well, I got a big announcement. I got a real big announcement. You guys want a big announcement?
Of course.
Dude.
Huh? You guys want a big announcement? Guess what?
Sure.
We have an American Standard, an ASTM, American Standard Testing Method subcommittee for writing tiny house. It just got approved today at 11 o'clock Eastern. So now we actually have that committee, but so Tuesdays, codes and standards are boring, guys. I hate to tell you, Tuesdays are boring days. They can be boring unless you're like me and Rich. We love those kinds of things,
Tony loves it too.
I mean, we're kind of strange in that respect. But here's the deal, and I want to get serious about this. The tiny house industry, as we know it, could easily go away very soon, because what they're trying to do, according to I'll quote Eric Freed from Colorado Building Official. He said what they're trying to do is to fit a round peg into a square hole. And so what that means is, what he meant by that is, what they're trying to do is write standards and codes in Colorado. They want to write codes in Colorado for tiny houses, not write them, but basically have a code for tiny houses, but fit them into the box of modular homes. And there's another push out there to push them into IRC, International Residential Code, which is existing, and modular home inspections are existing. And so all of that program is already existing. And what that would do is to push all of what we've done, what we've built into the tiny house industry, push it away. We'd go away. No, it would go away. Everything would go away, because we'd all be fit into and absorbed, assimilated into the existing codes and standards and the existing ways of building modulars or building HUD homes or whatever they're trying to do. And in order to make that not happen, we as a community, we have to come together, and we have to, number one, write some codes and standards. And that's what the ASTM committee is planning on doing and wanting to do. We also have to figure out how we can inspect and certify these homes reasonably well, without having to be a Champion Homes or a Clayton Homes, where we have a big old factory. So you guys that are builders that are out there building, a few a year, or you guys that are do it yourselfers or schools, there's got to be a way for you to stay in this tiny house world. So we need standards, we need inspection ways to do it. And then we need the laws of how they operate. We found out 2 weeks ago when we had Jennifer on, man, you don't want to be an RV dealer. You don't want to be an RV manufacturer. The rules and regulations that are around that are just horrendous, crazy. So that's why we want everybody to participate and tough it up and suck it up and come on Tuesdays, and we'll talk about how we can write some codes and standards and things like that. So that's Tuesdays. And then Wednesdays, we are we're doing tiny house communities, and that's the same thing. And it's the same boring, entitlements, and how do you hook up your water and sewer and electric, and how do you tie up property, and really the truth of the matter is there's a lot of money that's spent before you put your first shovel in the ground when you're doing a development like this. But the whole idea is we want to talk about not all the work that goes into it, but let's also talk about at the end product. At the end of the day, by the end of February, we want everybody that comes on Wednesdays to have the knowledge and skills about tiny house developments, tiny house communities, to have the knowledge and skills that around that, to be able to take themselves and go do a tiny house community for passive residual income. So if they can retire, if they want to retire, they can do, they can travel if they want to travel. But basically, if you Airbnb these tiny houses on a development that you have a hand in developing, you can create a nice nest egg of passive residual income. And so that's the end goal. And so in between that, we want to take Scott Banta and take his knowledge and skill and ability and teach everyone who wants to learn this stuff so that they'll have the skills and the ability, and also the support and the back support of all of us to go and do tiny house communities on their own. So that's kind of the lead up that I wanted to talk about the codes and standards and the tiny house communities that we're doing Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And that being said, I'm ready to turn this over to our inspectors. Let me introduce them to you. Sherry Sherrill is the operations manager in our company, and we have 3 inspectors on today: Rich and Tony and Chad. And we're going to be talking about, we've got an agenda put together for you, but this is going to be your session too. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask your question. If you're a little shy and you don't want to ask it, you can put it in the chat and Leanne can ask it for you. But with that said, how do you want to go from here, Sherry? You want me to pull up an agenda, or do you want me to just probably if I just pulled it up and didn't share it with everybody and just did 1 item, 2 item, 3 item, or how do you want to do that?
Yeah, I think that's what we need to do, is just bring up each item individually, and that way they have time to discuss each item of the topic.
Okay. All right. All right. So these are some items that we wanted to talk about today, and doesn't mean that we have to stay on these items. If if we go through these and you've got other questions on your heart, feel free to ask those. But first question is, we want to talk about smoke detectors and where do they go?
Want me to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Fun with it.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of confusion with the smoke detectors, and that's why we want to bring it up. Normally, the builders have been taking a single smoke detector and putting it in the main portion of the house and just figuring that was sufficient. Unfortunately, the standards that we use requires each loft to have a smoke detector in it. The main portion of the living area is to have a smoke detector in it. And if you have a separate sleeping area other than the lofts, that has to have a smoke detector in it. And it seems like it's a lot of overkill, and I might even agree with that, but our hands are tied with that because that's actually what the codes require.
Yeah, and Tony, what about interconnecting them as well?
Yeah, so I couldn't find, I know in normal house wiring, we interconnect them. I couldn't find it in the ANSI codes or the 552, but I think it's a very good idea to have them interconnected, even though, we're still talking about it. It's a small box, it's not like a regular house, but interconnecting them is not a bad idea at all.
Yeah.
And I think, guys, that if we are going to be writing standards and codes, that's one of the things that's going to be written in there, is that they need to be interconnected, because what we're saying is, with an RV, maybe not, you just live temporary seasonal housing, but if you want people to live full time in these tiny houses, they need to be more like a dwelling, built more like a house than an RV. And so that I don't know, because the codes aren't written yet. We'll know in a few months what ends up, but if you go ahead and do it now, it's one wire. That's all it is. You connect everything up with one hot wire, and you're good to go. And the other thing that I want to say is, if your grandkid or your kid is up in the loft, wouldn't you want to have that extra protection of that, the interconnection? So if you have your master bedroom in the back of the tiny house and the loft might be in the front of the tiny house over, cantilever or something, you would want that, at least I would, if it was my kid or grandkid, that extra protection there for them so that everything would go off in case of an emergency. All right. Anything else on that, guys? Any questions?
You know
All
what,
right.
while we're on that topic, why don't we just touch base on dangerous gas detectors, since they fall under the same category. So when you have propane to a tiny house, a typical like a smoke CO combo wouldn't suffice. You would have to have a specific propane or dangerous gas detector installed as well, in addition to the smoke detectors. Now, you only need one of the dangerous gas detectors, but you still would have to have that in addition to the smokes.
And where should that be placed? Up on the ceiling?
A lot of them come with plug-in with battery backup. So I mean, you just stick it in a receptacle and have fresh batteries to it.
Yeah, they're supposed to be located within 18 inches of the floor.
Yeah, because gas sinks down to the floor. It
Yeah.
doesn't rise. Propane is heavier than air, so it sinks down. So yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the difference between a smoke detector and a CO detector? Is there one?
Yeah, well, a CO detector is fuel that's already been burnt. The LP detector that Rich is talking about is for raw fuel, raw propane. So
Right,
the
but
fuel that's already been burnt will rise to the top, where the liquid propane, if there's a leak on that, it's heavy, it'll lay on the floor.
right. But I guess what I was trying to say, you can buy just a smoke detector, or you can buy a combo
Right.
smoke and CO. Do you need combos on every smoke detector, or can you just have one combo unit? And the carbon monoxide is what kills people too, so you can't smell it or anything, but apparently this CO detector can detect that.
Yeah, well, most of our builders do get the combination ones. I don't even know what the code says about how many you would have to have, or if each, do you, Rich, if each smoke detector is supposed to be CO also, or?
In the tiny house,
Yeah,
I haven't seen anything mentioned in the ANSI standard that I recall.
I haven't either, but
Well, in the ANSI standard, it just says one smoke detector. It
Right.
doesn't even say CO. But once again, we're not building RVs, so we can't really just, in the NOAA ANSI Plus stand or the NOAA Plus standard, we do require, the interconnection of the smoke detectors, and I think it's at least one CO detector, and if you have three of them, at least one of them has to be a combo, but I think the other two could be just smoke.
Right, because Robin, you're right. Because if they're interconnected, now that you're saying that, if they're interconnected, they're all gonna chime off when one goes off anyway. So it'll add the protection layer that's needed there.
Okay.
I do have a
next-
question.
Okay, go ahead, Leanne.
Well, Kirsten Pope has a question. Do both smoke detectors have to be hardwired, or can one be hardwired and the other battery only?
well, with the
Good
NOAA
question.
Plus standards, they all have to be hardwired.
All right,
That was
yeah,
as of August the 15th. We
Yeah.
changed that.
Mhm.
yeah. It doesn't do much good to have one not and one would be hardwired.
You wouldn't
Because
be able to interconnect them.
the idea is if one goes off, all of them goes off, and that's what the interconnection does. It's not that, one has to stay up and powered or whatever, but yeah. All right, location and requirement of wastewater vent line. Talk about that for a minute.
Hold
What's-
on, Doug, did you have Doug had a question, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about on the smoke detectors. I seem to recall seeing one that doesn't have to be hardwired and will trigger all other alarms. If when it goes off, it has an audible detection system that will trigger the other alarm if it hears another one go off.
Hmm.
Would that be
Yeah.
acceptable? I'll have
No,
to
I-
dig it.
I-
I'll have to look and dig it
Yeah.
back up if I can find it.
that's
I
what
would
I'm
say-
saying.
I would say as long as it has a UL listing for that, then yeah, I wouldn't see a problem with that. We would just, confirm the UL listing and go from there.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, Tony and I had a big discussion on that the other day.
In lieu
Well,
of barbed wire.
Yeah, but when I was wondering though, if that's the case, would the other, say we had 2 lofts, do we need 3 smoke detectors? And if that was the case, would all 3 smoke detectors would they have to be all of the wireless method? Because I'm not sure how the wired ones would actually respond to the wireless one.
Yeah, Chad tried to jump in on that one. Chad, what did you say? You sound like Darth Vader. Chad, you must be in a bad area.
Yeah, you're breaking up, Chad.
Hold
See,
that thought.
yeah, hold that thought.
I think he's
All right.
traveling right now.
Let's jump on to
He's on his way home.
wastewater vent lines. Somebody want to,
In wastewater vent lines, they're getting, the other thing is, oh, I like that. The wastewater vent lines, we're getting, especially the DIYers are feeling that an air admittance valve under the sink is sufficient. And we've had a couple plumbers say the same thing. And we're going back and telling them, which is right, that all septic systems, wastewater systems must be vented to the outside air. So the other problem is that we're running into is the placement of it, mainly because they are working with a minimal amount of wall space and windows are filling up a lot of it. And they really don't want to have to go through the roof if they don't have to. So there is the ability to go out the side wall on it, but there's a lot of measurements that come into play as far as where the vent can be located away from windows or doors. So that was one of the things I think that we got to educate them on is what those measurements are. And just for anyone that's listening right now, it would have to be horizontally 10 feet from any opening or intake and 4 feet below or 3 feet above. Is that right, Rich? I think I got that.
Spot on, Tony.
And so,
wait a minute,
again,
4
when
feet
you think
above
about-
or below an opening?
yeah, in other words, whether you have an operable window that opens, it can exit, but it would have to be 3 feet above that, or 4 feet below it, and 10 feet horizontally. And the other thing is they don't count corners. So if you got a window that's 2 foot off the corner, but right around the corner is where you want to go out, you can actually go out because that corner is not counted.
Okay, how about a soffit? You go out the soffit?
You could, I guess you could go out the soffit. We don't really have anyone that
Yeah,
really
but you,
puts soffits on the tiny houses. Very rare.
I don't know if you'd want to go out the soffit. I don't know.
yeah, if it's
Yeah,
a
I
vent,
mean-
it's the purpose.
Yeah,
Right.
Go out the gable end. Right?
Yeah,
Build your-
gable end's
build your
always
tiny
usually the
house.
better end. Right.
Right, build your tiny house so that you can push that out either end.
Kirsten,
As
did
long
you
as-
want to talk? Oh, never mind. I thought I saw you light up. You light up when you talk, believe it or not. All right, all right, clarification. Does every appliance have to have a vent to the outside?
No,
No?
I think the code says every 3 appliances. If I remember right, but Rich might know better on that. I
So
think
when
we
you're
did-
saying,
I think you're allowed 1 vent line per 3, is that right?
No,
So
I'm
we-
talking, yeah, I'm talking about like a toilet, a sink and a shower or something. Those are,
Right,
yeah,
As
does
far-
every,
as far as the plumbing fixtures go, every vent or every plumbing fixture has to have access to ventilation, let's say. So you need 1.5 inch vent that goes up and out or outside in some manner. The other fixtures can have the air admittance valves installed in them to avoid, multiple vents going out through the sidewall or through the roof.
so you could put an air admittance valve under the kitchen sink and then vent the bathroom fixtures through the wall with an outdoor vent, and that would be perfectly fine.
yeah,
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and the main reason for that, guys, is the methane gas doesn't get out an air admittance valve. So you don't want,
right,
if you're hooked up to some kind of a septic or sewer, you're creating methane. There's methane gas that needs to go somewhere. Your septic tank doesn't have a vent on it, so to speak. And so what they use is the vent on your house. And so that just, it lets that gas escape to the outside in some way, fashion. And so that's why we need to have it. Otherwise you could put air admittance valves on everything.
and to clarify the difference in the two is the air admittance valve is exactly what it says, air admittance. It allows air to go into the system so that other fixtures don't siphon the water out of the other traps. And the vent is actually to create a negative pressure on the system, so is that any methane gas or anything pushing back to the house will have a path to go. It's like water and electric, it'll seek its path of least resistance.
All right,
I have a
Chad?
question.
go ahead,
And
Leanne.
then Chad made a comment.
Sean's got his hand up too.
Okay, hold on. Don't overwhelm me. Okay, so Ron said, so 4 feet above the window will end up being close to the height of the roof peak,
3 feet, it's 3 feet above a window.
3 feet.
And
3
that's the
feet.
operable part of the window too. But 3 feet.
Okay,
above.
so if it's a single hung window, you wouldn't count the top sash, you just count the bottom sash.
Right, right.
Okay, so Chad is what he was trying to say, but he sounded like Darth. He said the IRC recognizes wireless interconnected smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. All they require is 120-volt battery power or battery power. They send a wireless signal to activate the others. Carbon monoxide alarms are required in the immediate vicinity of each separate sleeping area. This all from sections 314 and 315 of the IRC.
So they'd have to all be of the wireless
Right, they would
Yeah,
all have to be,
design. Yeah, they'd all have to be of the wireless design.
Yep.
Can
Thanks,
you guys
Chad.
hear me now, or do I still sound like Star Wars?
No, you're better. It's better.
Yes,
Better?
you sound
Okay.
like you sound like you now.
Good deal. So a lot of times what people will do, especially in retrofitting situations, is they will use standard connection methods, hardwire interconnect for 2 or 3 or so or whatever. And then let's say they got to get one more and it's in a hard to get to area. They'll install a wireless unit there and then replace one of the others with a wireless unit. And then the 2 wireless units will talk together. And then that wireless unit will also set the other ones off that are not wireless. So obviously in a tiny home, we're talking about a lot less space. So probably not as critical or not as big of an issue here though.
It's good we brought it up though, because I've not had anyone, I don't know if Rich has, have asked that question. They all just use the standard ones, but that's good
Sure.
that we know that for, for future.
But I think a little bit it's frustrating because one of those smoke alarms is going to blow anybody in even a 10 by 28 home out of that tiny house. So this is where Tony and I were talking about the rules shouldn't technically apply like that. They should be changed for tiny homes.
Oh, yeah, I've
you imagine-
inspected some, Doug, where where they had to have 4 smoke detectors in there. Think
Wow.
about that. If all 4 went off at the same time. Whoa, yeah. Yeah,
I gotcha. Well, Sean's had his hand up for a while. You want to recognize Sean, Leanne? Or I'll recognize him. Go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, guys. Because of the way my trailer is configured, I am not putting in all of my plumbing until later. So from my site, all the plumbing pipes just drop down through the floor. They will all be connected and the vent pipe will be installed later on the outside of the wall going up. That's just how it's happening. And then there's also some codes. Sometimes they want like a 2 or 3 inch vent pipe for the toilet. So dealing with the way that the county ends up wanting that to be done, I can't put that in the wall anyway. So both things are happening. Either way, for now, the pipes for all both sinks, the toilet and the shower will go straight down out of the bottom and won't get connected until later.
Yeah, we run across that here and there with different builders. It's not a problem. The only thing to really bear in mind is that we'll need some way to test it when you do get all the piping in and configured.
Right. The pipe is one pipe right through the floor.
Yeah.
Right.
All right,
Yeah,
we'll figure it
that's
out. We'll
that.
figure it out. Very good. Thanks, guys.
And the other thing, while he brought that up, some people, especially in the northern states, will run their supply lines on the interior of the house too, in back of the cabinets and stuff. And so we on the rough end stage 3 inspection, how do you guys handle those types of things?
we don't, we just don't, we mark it as incomplete, that it's, until we get to seeing the rest of the plumbing. And we have, a couple of them that I think Doug's one, that they do it at the end. We catch
I
them.
was just gonna say, I think you're one of the inspectors on my first tiny house
Yeah.
there. And I did the plumbing inside. The rough plumbing just came after all the walls were sealed up,
Right,
right?
right.
I mean, it was, you still saw it. It's just,
Right.
it just got approved at a later phase, that's all. Yeah, you can't, up here, you can't put it in the walls unless you spray foam them. I mean, if you spray foam the walls, then sure, but I don't do that because that's just asking for frozen pipes later on and customers coming back at you mad.
Right, yeah.
All right, next question, or talking point, location of electric panel.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I really think most of the people are getting the message now that you can't put electric panel in a bathroom. I think most of us, we're hitting some DIYers every now and then. It's trying it. But the location electric panel is important because you can't have it in a bathroom. You can't have it in a wet area, but you can't have it on the stairs. And we, as far as NOAA goes, have decided that you can't have it in a loft, because what we find is in the loft, a lot of people are just piling a dresser in front of it or piling stuff in front of it, and it's not accessible. And the code says that it must be accessible. Those are the primary things as far as where it can't go.
What are
Question on
the
that.
what are the clearance dimensions, Tony?
I think they're 30 inches in front of it and 24 to the sides.
Right.
24 wide and 30.
Yeah,
Now, I can, in a home, I can put an electric panel in a closet
that's
as
the
long
other
as I
place
meet
that-
those dimensions. So
Well,
my question is,
yeah.
with NOAA, can I put that electrical panel, say under stairs, in a closet that I've built?
No, so here's
Not in the
where,
closed closet.
yeah, here's where it comes into. It isn't NOAA that says you can't do that. It's actually the National Electric Code says you can't put it in a closet.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking like an electrical room where it has to
Electric room,
be
mechanical room is
a
different.
separate
Yeah.
room, right?
Right, right.
And what's the highest you can put a electric panel?
It's not the
top of
panel
breaker?
itself. If I remember right, it's the actual breaker handle. I think it's 6'4",
7 to the center.
6'7".
Yes,
Well, if we're
It's
using NEC, yeah, it's 6'7" to the center of the handle.
yeah,
Okay, to the handle,
6
yeah.
foot 7 inches. So in other words, you can put it as low as you want to put it, but you can't put it any
Right.
higher than where the top breaker is 6'7" inches from the floor.
That's why I like the RV panels. And it gives you the option of 12 volt and 110.
I'm seeing a lot of them lately.
They look a lot better.
Yeah.
And in IRC, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it 30-inch wide in National Electric Code for IRC?
It is.
For the working space,
Yes.
it's 30 wide, 36 inches out in front of it, and that 30 inches can be taken anywhere in front of the equipment. So you can start your measurement at the left side of the panel, work to the right side of the panel, work left. Just somewhere in there, you've got to have 30 inches in width.
So in other words, the electric
and-
panel doesn't have to be centered in that 30 space.
No,
No, you have to have
not for the
30,
electrical code.
30 inches of operating area.
And then in the RV code, it's 24 inches wide.
Now, what about putting a picture or something over it?
You can do that. We get.
That's what I thought.
We get. Yeah, we don't have any control what you put over it.
Nope.
Well, I mean, if you don't like the way it looks.
I
just put
agree, yeah.
Hang a Van Gogh over it.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
All right. Next question, the next topic, sizing of secondary egress.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So there's always a sticky wicket. So the secondary egress in a sleeping area, I always refer to it as a sleeping area instead of a loft, but you have a clear opening of 24 inches wide by 17 high. Now, when we say clear opening, or when the standard actually says clear opening, what is meant by that clear opening is that when the window is in a full open position, from the interior parts of the window trim to the next window trim on the sash, that has to be measured at 24 inches wide by 17 high. And unfortunately, you can't interchange those measurements. Those are the minimums for width and minimums for height. You can always go larger. You can't ever go smaller.
Yeah. What about, does it have to be a rectangle?
No, you can go there, and I'll let somebody else chime in on those measurements.
Yeah, it can be eclipsed.
I believe it was 24 by 24.
Doesn't it have to be a square area, though?
Can you see
Yes.
can you see
It
that?
can be, it can be an eclipse.
So basically it's an ellipsoid, guys, which means, and the reason why I wanted to bring that up, nobody ever puts an ellipsoid window in, but the reason why I wanted to bring that up was if you were in a loft and you wanted to put a 24-inch by 24-inch
Skylight?
skylight, yeah, skylight, it would meet that ellipsoid in the open position. It meets that 17 by 24 ellipsoid, and it has to be 24 wide and 17 tall on a window, but in a loft it can be skewed 45 degrees where you can get out, so they will allow that. But that's in the RV code. What about the IRC code?
Different animal. So there's two different. One would be a 5 square foot window opening if you were 6 foot or less from grade. or a 5.7 if you were above that 6-foot opening. And they have minimum openings of 24 by 20.
Right.
But a 20 would never meet a
20 by
5.0.
24.
And that's 20 inches wide, right? 20 inches wide. So in the RV world, it's 24 inches wide. In the in IRC, it's 20 inches wide.
Okay.
And was it 44 inches to the sill?
Maximum of 44 inches to the sill. Yeah.
That's IRC.
Yes.
Right.
Mhm.
And some people are building to IRC.
Mhm.
All right.
That's my goal on all of them, is to implement everything that I possibly can, the best standards of each.
Right.
Good. Yeah. Good deal. Good deal. And
You know, that,
so-
that also gives your clients a better shot at placement when
Yeah.
when they take it somewhere.
yeah,
Yeah. By
absolutely. Any questions on the windows, guys? Are we good with that? All right. Top and bottom plate connectors.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of questions on why do we have to do that? Why do we want that king stud tied to the bottom plate, and why are we tying it up to at the double top plate? But you know, I'd say back to them, well, why are you bolting it down to the trailer frame if we're not going to attach everything to it? So the reason for that is what we're trying to do is you bolt it down that wall to the trailer frame. So all we're trying to do is tie that roof eventually down to that bolt or that bottom plate. So that's why NOAA requires the connectors from the bottom plate to the stud, and then at the top of the stud to the double top plate. And then all we're doing is just tying everything together.
right. Yeah. You're just
And
making
that
it
is for all studs except for jack studs, correct?
Right, right.
Because there's been some confusion because of us calling it king studs. King studs, by definition, accompany a jack stud for a header, so on
Right.
and so forth. And the others would be called common studs. So that was the question that I had received: is do the common studs need them as well? And I told them yes.
Yeah, you know, and you're right, Chad. That's exactly right. But I used that term a couple of times with some of the builders, and they didn't understand what I was talking about. So I just said, well, you know what? You know how the king stud runs from top to bottom? We'll just consider them all king studs. But you're
It
right,
might be
Chad.
easier to reword
Exactly.
that to where all studs but jack studs must be mechanically fastened top and bottom.
All full length studs.
full length.
Yeah.
Yes.
There you go.
And that's subject to change too, because once the engineers get involved with this, let's just say you have a 6-foot sliding glass door. You basically have more than 6 feet from one stud to the other stud in width. And I know in some high wind areas, the jack studs are required to be down, and then there needs to be a strap that would go from the header to the studs, and then the cripples above that header would have to be strapped. So, I mean, that's really overkill in a lot of respects. But if we do get to a point where we're actually writing standards and codes, that's why we need you guys to come in and say, this is what we think we need. We debate on it. We come up, we say, okay, we vote. Okay, this is what we're going to do. However, whatever method we have, we want to have the input of our builders on the writing of these codes and standards that we're putting together here.
Oh, absolutely.
Why not
And-
use a Simpson strong tie? They make the long strips, right? I forget what
Yeah.
they call them, but I've used them, right? And if you got a tie, especially on this last build where I built it more like a house where you got a first floor and a second floor, and you have the 4x4 running all the way around it. So there was a little balloon framing in the home. So Tony and I were talking, and that's what I did. I took the strapping and went from the bottom stud all the way up to the top stud and nailed it all the way down through to make that connection.
That
Now,
was
my
smart-
understanding is it's not
smart way.
every single solitary stud that has to be tied in. On the roof it is, on the rafters, but I thought it was every 6 feet you had to have a vertical stud from the bottom to the top that was actually strapped.
I don't
Well,
think,
I
yeah, I don't think we require that.
Go ahead, Rich.
I didn't really want to dive into this on Tiny Talks right now, but so the way that I understand it is that when we're saying king stud, it is supposed to be just the king studs. So the king studs at any door opening, window opening, anything like that. Those are the ones that receive a strap at the bottom and a mechanical fastener at the bottom, mechanical fastener at the top. And then in addition to that, the rafters down to the double top plate or single would also require a mechanical fastener. Not every stud in the whole tiny house.
Yeah, but NOAA's plus standards does require it to be every common stud and king stud.
Yeah, and
That
being in
seems a little
hurricane,
overkill.
yeah, and bringing it, yeah, you're right. And then, and it's something that we want to address. I mean, right now we're using the NOAA plus standard and doing the best we can once we really have these standards. But in a hurricane or a wind state like Florida, it is required on every stud if you're building houses. And they're on wheels, so potentially they could go to a wind state. So what we're thinking about, guys, is having when we write these standards to have different zones so that this tiny house is built to this zone with certain insulation value, and another would be to a different zone with a different insulation value. And one might be set up for earthquakes, and one might be set up for to handle extra snow loads. Or we just say, forget it, guys, we're going to build everything to meet all the standards and codes for a tiny house. So that's what we're going to be working on when we write our own standards and codes for tiny houses. But for right now, what you see, what you read in the NOAA ANSI, when you read in the NOAA plus standard, that's what you're going to be required to build to for the seal.
You know,
So-
and to address that too, as you said, that if the house is going to be in a wind area or so forth like that, but we don't know. So Doug builds a house, sells it to a client. The client 2 years from now moves it to a wind area, and it has to already be protected for that. So because these houses are on wheels, it's very difficult to say, oh, well, we're going to do this to a certain zone or that zone, because we don't know where that house is going to wind up 5 years from now.
And as
Yeah.
a builder, I'm right there with you, Tony, 100%. Because I don't know. Let's see a show of hands. Anybody that wants to pick a roof up off the highway for their customer. I mean, I
Yeah,
don't.
Right. You're right.
So I'm happy, you know, the Simpson Strong Ties SDWCs, they're, you know, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think they're cheap insurance.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other ways to do that with the truss screws I just found out about recently and all.
That's the
kind of-
SDWC. Yep.
Yeah, and then you have anyway, let's move on because we only have a
Hold
few
on.
more.
Hold on, Robert. So I'm on our website now, and I'm looking at the info, and it says, and it does say all king studs. So we definitely have to clarify that language there.
Yeah,
All
we do.
That's what I was saying. I've had a couple people ask me about it. I've noticed on other ones that I was doing a different inspection on, I noticed that they did have mechanical fasteners on all of them. So I assumed that's what was meant by that.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, we'll have a clarification on that upcoming here. We'll get that figured out. Well, moving right along, floor pan ventilation and thermal breaks of metal in contact with the wood.
So I'll take thermal breaks if Tony wants to, or somebody else wants to jump on the pan ventilation. So as far as the thermal breaks, so what we're looking for, any part of the metal trailer frame that is in contact with wood, that will be some part of the house floor. We're looking for some thermal breaks. So we're looking to basically reduce the amount of cold transfer into the wood product itself and keep the home a little bit more comfortable. Um, and that can be achieved by something as simple as sill seal, that you would see on a residential house, or there's a thousand products out there, that can be used for this, same purpose.
Yeah, and
And-
anybody want to do the pan, or I kind of know a little bit about pans.
Well, I want to go right back to what Rich was just talking about. I did hit a couple of builders that are using, instead of like sill seal or so, they're using a 1-inch styrofoam board.
Good point,
And,
Tony.
and I told them
Half
the,
inch.
they were using, I hit a couple, they were using 1-inch, but the 1/2 inch too, they used a 1/2 inch too. But I told them, if you use anything like that, that once you build your house, before you close your interior walls, you need to go back and retighten all those bolts that are going to the through the bottom plate into the trailer frame because of compression. When you put it down, of course, it had no weight on it. Now you've built your walls, your roof, everything. So I recommend to them that they go back and retighten those bolts.
Yeah, and
Tony,
on that same topic there, Tony, if we have any builders that are doing that type of method, you have to use a product, a foam product that's XPS foam board.
Right.
It
Right.
has to have it's a 60 PSI rating for the foam board itself. There's a lot of foam boards out there that are 20 and 25, but that will compress and it'll end up splitting out under itself because it just handle the load. So if anybody does that, please make sure that it's 60 PSI or better rating.
Right. And I really don't recommend anybody use more than 1/2 inch anyway.
Something that-
agree.
Yeah, something that I experienced with this, and I would say might be a recommendation to change, is that all nuts must be outward facing, because usually you're doing a bolt, so they must be facing down. Use a Loctite and a lock washer, and that way they can be adjusted over time. Because what happens when someone hauls this thing down the road and it's shaking and it's being beaten by the wind?
Very true.
Does that change that compression level? And it's something I thought about when I'm building this one, because I did just that. I put 1/2 inch XPS underneath the entire floor and wall structure.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, the only problem is when you run into trailer manufacturers that weld 1/2 inch bolts on there, and
Right.
there's no way to tighten it after the wall's installed.
Well, I mean, just, okay, it's not okay to use welded rods, bolts to the
Right,
frame
right.
when you're doing that, because you have to be able to adjust the fastening it. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yep, no, it's something to bring up, and if we want to mandate that, we certainly can. Last topic, fire sealing the top plate penetrations.
Yeah, a lot of builders are forgetting that if they're not using spray foam as insulation, that anytime you make these penetrations, and it's not just plumbing, not just electrical, it's plumbing too. Anytime you make these penetrations, they have to be sealed. That's an actual fire code. That's not a NOAA code. They have to be sealed. We call it fire blocking, but some of the builders are forgetting to do that when they're putting in like rock wool and fiberglass. So that's one thing that we do go back and we're questioning them on and checking.
Right. And I just want to bring up a point to that is it's not just the top plates. It's, if we have bottom plate, which we have some bottom plate connections that go through, you want to seal up anything top or bottom, and to throw a little bit more into that, the pan liner as well. That is with the drops that we were just talking about earlier with the plumbing and so forth, those drops 100% have to be sealed up.
Yeah, it should be sealed, right?
So I'm taking it a step further and I'm gonna seal up all my horizontal connections too, because I feel like if fire can go up, it can go sideways too. And if
We
it
do
gets
have
in the
builders
next
doing that.
cavity,
Yeah.
then the next cavity, I wouldn't mind seeing that become a rule.
Yeah, I mean, the IRC has that at every 10 foot of wall space, so it does make sense.
That's
There
right, I
was
forgot about
one
that.
more topic also that we wanted to address, guys. Robin just got kicked off, I think. The ice and water shield.
Oh, yeah, so we're getting a lot of pushback on that, on that occasionally. That's, especially with the people that are not in a real cold, like you're in Florida. So why do I need ice and water shield? If it rains where you are, you need it. That's it. The thing is, the code says that if a home is less than 412, it's considered a low pitch home. So you would be required to have ice and water shield for the first row. If it gets below a 212 pitch, then it's considered a flat roof. And it has to have ice and water shield over the entire roof.
Mhm.
But I've got some of the builders are saying, well, I'm using 30-pound felt, stuff like that. That's fine, but the first row is still gonna have to be ice and water shield if you have enough pitch. If you don't have
Right.
enough pitch, you gotta do the whole thing.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to, the home could be built in Florida, end up in Maine for all we know, or
Well,
somewhere in the
exactly,
south.
right. Exactly
So-
right. Yeah.
The ounce of protection for everybody.
And I mean, what part of ice and water is not everywhere? The water, right?
Oh, that's exactly right. But the other thing is that I'm hitting is they don't know the proper way to put it down. And when I say that is the very first row that of ice and water shield that goes down should really overlap the end or the outs or the at the edge should overlap by at least 2 inches. Because you have to seal that section in. And what they're doing, I'm catching some of them, they're just putting it even with the sheathing. But
Yes.
that's kind of defeating what we're looking for too. Because if you're going to get, especially if it's rain, you're going to get, some moisture coming back. You want to protect the edge of that sheathing, whatever it is. So there should be at least 2 inches overlapped so that it folds down.
It's a good opportunity for another show of hands of how many people would like to go back to deal with their customers with mold in their house or rain,
Oh,
water
I agree.
damage. I
Yeah.
mean, to me,
Absolutely.
put the raincoat on.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah.
And I just want to add that to that. There again, we're trying for placement for these tiny houses, which is going to benefit us builders, the tiny house buyers. So
Right.
the more they're like a regular home, the better off our placement is going to be. So it might sound overkill on a lot of the things that we're doing, but we're definitely getting in the position now to where we can do these kind of things so that our houses get their placement and your buyers get their placement that they want.
I see Kirsten has her hand up.
All right, guys, we're about out of time today. Is there anything inspector wise that you guys have seen in the last week that was interesting or that you'd like to bring up before we kind of close things out?
Believe Tony said Kirsten had her hand up, or somebody had their hand up.
Well, it's down now. I
Oh,
think
it's
she
down.
got tired.
Okay, you scared her away, Robin.
We
It's
did
what?
have a comment from Sean. He had to sign off, but he said, great topics. I must sign off. Thank you, Noah.
One
right.
thing
I
I'll bring up
just want
for
to
the,
just want to give a quick shout out to Tony. Thank you to the other day for being available and returning my call quickly.
Doug,
We tried.
Chad was
we
trying to
tried.
come on here too. What's up, Chad?
Sure. So one thing I saw here recently on a reinspect, and just kind of take note, for electrical panels, the breakers that are installed in those panels have to be listed for those panels. Just because a Square D Homeline breaker will fit into a Cutler Hammer BR panel does not mean it's listed for it. So this one panel I saw, it was a Eaton BR panel, and it had a Square D Homeline, it had a Siemens, and it had BR breakers in it. I kindly informed them that that's something they will want to change out because they are not listed for use in those panels. Just because they fit doesn't mean it's correct. So just kind of keep a heads up on, keep a lookout on that to the inspectors and to the builders.
Yeah.
Just because it fits doesn't mean it's made for it. So keep an eye out on that.
And normally too, if the builder looks on the panel cover, on the inside of the cover, normally it will tell you what breakers are available for that panel.
Yep, the acceptable breaker types.
How about the RV panels? The RV ones, do you know anything about those? I mean, is there a specific requirement?
I don't actually. I just
I've seen some in the past, and mobile homes especially, that were rated for different brands of breakers. But the biggest thing is, the easiest thing to do is look at the information label. It's going to tell you the acceptable breaker types for that panel, and just make sure it matches the model on the breaker. I've seen a lot of pool panels. The same deal. It'll list, 5 different brands of breakers you could put in it, and that's okay because they've listed it for that.
Because I seem to recall the one that I put in. It was the trying to remember, something Dynamics, but I seem to recall it saying that it took a specific breaker type, not a brand Siemens or any of those. It had to be a specific breaker type, and there's a lot of manufacturers that make that type of breaker.
Not necessarily. If you look, a Siemens breaker, a Square D Homeline, and a Cutler Hammer BR. Cutler Hammer BR is going to be a type BR. Square D Homeline is going to be a type HOM, and a Siemens is going to be a type QP. So you've got to look at the type on that breaker. Just because they look the same doesn't mean they're rated for it. So that's something to look out for.
Yeah, and if I remember right,
Very
Chad,
helpful.
the reasoning for that is the material that the bus bar is made of to be compatible with the jaw on the breaker itself.
100% right. So that's what I tell people is, first of all, they've taken a Chevrolet alternator and they put it into a Ford pickup truck. They got it to work, but it's not right.
Done that.
So
That's right.
but the thing I tell them is, look, it's going to work for now. 10 years down the road, the dissimilar metals will eat each other and it will burn up. I've seen it, I don't know how many times. Every time I've gone to a panel that's burned up, it's because it had a wrong main in it. The last one I had was a Siemens panel. It had a Cutler Hammer BR main put in it. Guess what? It totally melted the backside of it out. The dissimilar metals will eat each other over time. And Tony, you're correct. The metals are not listed for use in that type. So it's not an issue that's going to present itself tomorrow. It's 10 years down the road
Right.
when it'll show up.
But it's something we should look out for, though.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, who wants to be part of a class action lawsuit?
Well, guys,
Absolutely.
Not
on
raising
that
my
note,
hand.
I think what we're going to do, Sherry, if it's okay with you, can we let you have any last minute words for us?
Nope, I think we're good. I think the inspectors have covered the
Yeah.
topics very well. Thank you,
Mhm,
guys.
Great job. Great job, guys.
All right, Leanne, you want to bring us out?
Oh, sure. Well, tomorrow's Friday and we will not be meeting tomorrow. We will meet on Monday where we have V. Tanner with Homestead Tiny Homes located in Alpharetta, Georgia. V is gonna, he talked for us during our 5-star builder workshop, and he's gonna talk some more about his practices and hopefully give us a tour of different builds he has in progress. So if you want to see another manufacturer in action, tune in. Well, tune in anyway at 5 o'clock. We'll be sending out the Zoom as usual at 4:45. And you guys have a good night. And thanks to the inspectors. Y'all did a great job, really. And thank you, Sherry. And I think we're good, right?
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Doug says thank you,
Thank you.
Robin, for putting this
Thanks, guys.
on. Okay. All right,
Yeah,
sounds good stuff,
we are
guys.
gonna have the recordings available, Doug.
Okay.
All right,
All right. Bye, everyone.
bye-bye.